turn off my video because I hate to see myself talk as I'm going through the presentation.
I have started the Facebook Live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Reference Solutions, non-profit organizations and fundraising, offered by the Pony Public Library and Reference Solutions Data Axle. I'm Spiros Sobanakis, a technology and adult services librarian at the Pony Public Library. This webinar is presented by Bill Carlson, the Customer Success Manager of Data Axle Library Division. Hi, Bill. Thank you for coming here today, and it's all yours.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Spiros. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. And Spiros, it says that that my screen is disabled by you. Could you allow me to share?
One moment to see if there is a problem here. Okay, the screen is clear from my side.
Okay. It still says disabled participant screen sharing.
Let me try
by the host.
Something. How about now?
There it goes. And Spiros, if you could confirm you're seeing my screen now, that would be terrific.
I can see it.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you, everyone. Sorry about that technical delay. My name is Bill Carlson. I am with Reference Solutions. We're located in Omaha, Nebraska. Gosh, we've been around since 1972, and this platform that's available through libraries has been around since 1992. So I've been with the company now for 12 years, and this is the 5th generation of that data platform that we've made available to our library customers across the United States. So with that said, I do want to give you a quick little tour of the website and show you where you could glean some information or even reach out for assistance. You can always feel free to reach out to the library for help, but you can also contact us, and our contact information can be found in many places. Certainly down here at the bottom of the page, we have our 800 number as well as our email address that you could reach out to us. Our hours of operation are Monday through Friday from 8 to 5 Central Standard Time. So if you happen to need us on the weekend or in the evening, we'll respond to you that next business day. And then we also have our contact information in several spots under the Learning Center here. We also have it here and then again down here. So certainly feel free to reach out to us. I also like to point out under this marketing and training material, I have information as it relates to database overviews, and there's one for each of our modules. So we have one for our US business module. We'll be talking about that today, and we'll also be talking about our consumer lifestyles information. So if you needed some assistance, you could certainly utilize the information contained within each of those. You could print that off if you would like, or you could have it open on another tab, and literally it will walk you through how to do a search. We also have our data dictionary here. So we have one for our business and one for consumers. Know that you could certainly get information if there were a particular element within the record itself that you had questions about. You could certainly get the answer under that data dictionary. So know you can always take advantage of that. And I do like to point out that we give you the ability to download our app. There's no charge for this. You can download that app, and when you go to launch it, you'll be asked to put in your zip code, after which you'll be given a list of libraries in the area that have access to reference solutions. And then you would just simply select yours, input your library card number, and you're in. So it is certainly that easy. We also, last but not certainly least, give you the ability to save your searches under a personal account. We added this feature probably 2 or 3 years ago because we were told by our library partners that instead of patrons needing to download information, which you can certainly do, in some cases, we were told that they wanted to simply be able to save their search and come back to it at whatever point in time was important to them. So certainly we made that available. Once you've registered, you can log in and get access to the information that you may have saved from most of these modules. You can't save information as it relates to the U.S. business and internships. You can email yourself those results though. So, but with all these other modules, you could certainly save that and come back to that at any point in time. And speaking of time, there is different update schedules for each of these. So let me explain that. The U.S. business database, which certainly gets the lion's share of attention, that information is being updated weekly. So we call verify businesses across the United States, and we do that annually, but we're doing it obviously Monday through Saturday. Our researchers' hours are Monday through Saturday, and they're making those phone calls to verify that business at said address. Obviously, we're capturing the name of that business. Since they answered that phone number, we know that the phone number is good. We're asking what line of business they're in, how many employees they have, the square footage of that office or that building that they're in, and we're capturing that and making that all part of a record that we then add some additional information to, such as competition. So we're doing that weekly, and we're pushing those updates live every Thursday into Friday. So that's being done once a week. Whereas our historical business records, which are our records, that is technically being updated at the beginning of each year. So if you need to go back, maybe you're looking for a business and it's closed, you can go back in history and see when it closed. And the historical records go back to 1997. That's when we started capturing that information at the end of every year and archiving it. So it will go back to 97. So once a year, and that's at the beginning of every new year. The jobs and internships, that's our information that we're getting through Indeed.com. And really the difference between going directly to Indeed and coming through our site is not only do you get those same opportunities to learn about jobs or internships, but you also get to learn about the company that's doing the hiring. So it's a great tool. This is being updated daily. Our new business file through the Secretary of State's office, county courthouse records, utility hookups, we're getting this information weekly and pushing that out. But we will keep that record in here for up to a year because we do have different customers that want to be able to go back and look over the last 12 months to see the types of businesses that are being registered for. So we're capturing that and updating that weekly. Our U.S. healthcare, our standard white pages, and our consumer lifestyles. Consumer lifestyles is the other module that we're going to cover. This information is being updated monthly. And then last but not least here is our new movers, new homeowners. We're getting that information through our license agreement with the USPS National Change of Address. So that's how we're learning about those folks that have moved to a new address. We're updating that weekly. So there's a quite a deep well of information here for you to be able to access depending on what your needs are. Certainly today we're going to focus on nonprofits and how they might use the database, and certainly even some fundraising, because fundraising is always about who knows whom, right? And how you can leverage certainly those relationships in order to be able to perhaps attract some funding that could come your way for your nonprofit. So I'm going to introduce you first to the US Business Database. The nice thing about all of these modules is they all function the same way. Of course, it's different criteria that you will use, but the processes and the tools that I'll share are used across the board in most of those modules that are available. In fact, you'll always come to the quick search page first whenever you open up any module. In this case, we give you the ability to look up one company. Maybe I need to identify one company that has recently decided that they're going to become perhaps a sponsor for us, and I would like to identify more companies like them. I could put in that one company name and then that city and state that that company is in and get just that record. And I'll show you what's valuable in that record once we start taking a look at those. I could also, maybe there's someone that I've heard about that's an executive with a company, but I'm not certain which company it was that they're affiliated with. I could certainly try that first name, last name search in whatever city and state to try and find that executive at that company. I could even do a reverse phone number lookup if I needed to. So know that there are a variety of options here just in the quick search if you would like. I do want to show you one tool, and we'll just use the city of Pontiac for this example. So I'll put in Pontiac. Notice how I start to type, and it gives it identifies what they think I'm looking for. I'll grab the state here of Michigan, and then I'm going to view my results. And I would like to clarify, we have 3 different bunches of records. We have our verified universe, which is about 15, almost 16 million verified records across the United States. Then we have our unverified records. Whenever I'm in the quick search, I'm only going to get verified records. So I'm going to look across Pontiac. I have 2,500 records in Pontiac that are verified records. I can even get that designation simply grabbing that record type. So it's certainly a quick way to identify, these are verified records. But I'll leave that on the corporate tree because we're going to come back to that here after a bit. So I've got these 2,500 records. The tool I want to show you is this charts tool. What this will do is it will break the businesses down by type of business. So those 2,500, it's going to start to make sense. What kinds of businesses are they? Well, of that 2,500, in this top 7, 819 of them are represented here. And in essence, in first position here are physicians and surgeons. And that's generally the case in most cities. They're all 1099 guys and gals. That's why there are so many of them. In second position, churches, then automated tellers, then restaurants, nurse practitioners. You get the idea. I've got that top 7. By the way, I can make that part of a PowerPoint presentation, or I could just print that off if I would like. And then I've got a full report listed down here. So all 2,500 of my records are listed here by their primary SIC code. And if you're not familiar with SIC, that's the Standard Industrial Classification Code. So we have that primary SIC code with the description and then the number of records that it applies to. So let's imagine for a moment that with your nonprofit that you tend to have great access to and positive responses from Maybe you get a lot of support from car dealers. So I've got used car dealers. I can get to this universe of 24 if I want by simply clicking on that number, and then it will hyperlink me right to that group. So I can certainly use that tool if I would want. And of course, I can always page through here to look at the other entities, right? Uh, it just depends on what you, maybe you get a lot of support from insurance companies. That could be another universe that you could hyperlink right to that group and identify those businesses that are in your city. And we're only looking at city. We could be looking at this from the standpoint of the entire county if we wanted to. So I always have this available to me. I can also change this up. We do have the NAICS codes as well. So that's the North American Industrial Classification Code. That coding system, technically, as far as Uncle Sam is concerned, has replaced the SIC codes. Most governmental agencies need to use the NAICS codes. We've kept the SIC codes alive. In fact, we've added to the SIC codes to make them more granular than they ever were when they were in use by Uncle Sam. So we have both of these codes. I could switch it up to NAICS if I wanted to. You could do it by zip codes if you wanted to, by sales volumes for companies if you wanted to, or certainly employment size. So if I were to look at the 2,500 businesses across your community, I could easily identify them by size. So at over 62.5%, this 1,423 businesses employ 1 to 4 employees, followed by 5 to 9, 10 to 19. You get the idea. It'll even give you some of those larger employers in the area and then that full report breakdown. So I do have that available to me. Again, I can make this part of a PowerPoint or print that information off. Just depends on what I might need to do. I'm going to go back to my results. We got here so easily by simply putting in the city and state and then selecting my charts option. So there's much more capability available under advanced search. And by the way, additional filters goes to the same place. Let me explain this left-hand column real quick. Under quick search, we saw where we could search for one company at a time. If I wanted to, I can use this company name option and I could search for maybe several companies. Maybe I want IBM as part of my list. I could add that. Maybe I always want Starbucks, so I'll include Starbucks as a company I'm going to look at. So I can put in as many companies by name and then make my geography selection and drive in just those records if I want to. Otherwise, we will always give you the company name. We'll always give you this executive information. However, maybe you need to identify companies with a chief executive officer. And they could be certain types of companies. I do have this keyword SIC and NAICS code as my option to drive in certain types of businesses. So I could be looking for just chief executive officers in certain types of businesses in certain areas of the country, wherever that might be. So no, I can drive that in that way, but we will always give you this information where we have that. As I mentioned, keyword is often used to drive in types of businesses. As it mentions here, restaurants. If that's the type of business that I wanted to drive in, I could get just those. Just depends on what I need. I do want to show you this major industry group. This is just the SIC codes, and it shows how granular we've taken this information. So when Uncle Sam was managing these SIC codes, they were at their longest a 4-digit code. And I'll show you under construction. So as you can see under construction, there are 3 two-digit codes here, and they always give you the initial 2 digits. Here's the definition for each of those. So I have my definition for 15, 16, and 17 listed there. And if I'm interested in general contractors and these others are not of interest, I could open this up to get to what Uncle Sam used to identify in these 4 digits. And that was the extent under this particular SIC code of 15. This was the extent of granularity that that would go to. We've actually added more to that, 2 additional codes to make it this much more granular. So if you only wanted to get to companies that their primary line of business was water damage restoration for residential homes, you could certainly do that. You could get that specific and just drive in those results. And what you'd want to do is simply come down here and tell the system, make sure that that's their primary line of business. And when I say that, think about Walmart. We know that their primary line of business is a grocer. But beyond that, they have lots of other lines of business under their umbrella. They have their pharmacy, they have their garden center, they have their automotive, they have their sporting equipment, they have their electronics, clothing, jewelry. You get the idea. They have a lot of other types of business under their umbrella. So if you need to be as specific as only their primary, and that's what you wanted in this water damage restoration type of business, you could get that granular. Know that you can certainly do that. Geography speaks for itself. I will show you this map-based search tool. You might want to use this to apply certain boundaries that aren't already made up by like zip codes or counties. So I'll certainly show you how to use that information. Phone kind of speaks for itself. Number of employees. If you wanted to use number of employees for a filter to only look at certain size businesses, you could drive that in as well. If you had a really good sponsor, a company that was very invested in your nonprofit and you wanted to identify more like them, you could do it certainly by type of business, but you might also look at it if they employ that range of 50 to 99, or maybe theirs is smaller, maybe it's 50 to 75. You could even come in here under show more options and you could select location only and you could say 50 to 75. If you wanted to get that specific, you could always do that. So know that it just depends on how you want to frame this, right? You've always had that capability. And as it relates to the sales volume below here, we never ask a private company how much money they're making. We learned a long time ago that will be the one question that would probably end most phone calls rather rapidly. So we have a team that put together an algorithm and they use certain information, some of which we're getting in that verification phone call, like the type of business they're in, how many employees, where they're physically located. You can imagine, if you think about all the different communities across the United States and all the potential variables related to where you're in business at, it could be as the variables could include, and often do, salaries, right? Some areas salaries are simply going to be higher. Certainly everything from power and lights could be different. Cost to lease or own a space can be different. So we take into account all of those kinds of variables. We also get some information through the Bureau of Labor and Statistics in order to produce an algorithm that then supports that sales number. If it's a publicly traded company, of course, that sales volume information is going to come from their 10K report. And we do the same with business expenditures. We also model this information as well. So you can always use this ownership if you would like. I do like to point out that we do have home-based businesses. So if someone were going to do maybe a neighborhood search, it's possible, unless you're driving in certain types of businesses. I don't know of any home-based banks, right? So if I were looking at the banking industry, I wouldn't have to worry about a home-based business showing up in my records because there aren't any. However, if I'm doing a search and I'm not looking at a specific type of business, it's possible that I could get home-based businesses that might show up. So you have two options here. You could look at only those that are home-based businesses, or you could exclude those. So it just depends on how you want to play that. Know that that's available. It's financial information will always give you that information where that's available. Special selects, I do like to point out years in the database. This is a great tool to be able to look at companies that might be newer in a community. So if that might be a group that you would like to focus on, because they may not know about your existence, right? They may not know about what you offer to the community as a nonprofit agency. You could say, show me these businesses, and you could do it by type as well. But you could say, show me those businesses that are newer in my community, and be able to drive in those kinds of results. And conversely, maybe you only want to see businesses that have been around for a while. You could, if 12 years were a high water mark for you, you could grab that and say, show me everything that's 12 years or older in my community, and drive in those results that way. So it all depends on how you want to use these various selection options to either include information or, in some cases, exclude information. I do like to point out professionals, all or one. This is referring to doctors, attorneys, CPAs. We added this because our library partners across the US were telling us that in some cases, when patrons were creating lists that they intended on doing mailers to, they didn't necessarily want to reach out to every attorney in the office. They wanted one primary. So with that, I could change up my all to one, and that means I would receive or get fewer records in my end results because I'm only looking at one professional as it would relate to a doctor's office or a dentist's office or an attorney's office. So know that that's certainly something you could utilize as well. And something that I noticed in your community, you may have seen when I first pulled up those charts, I believe it was in third or fourth position in your community were ATM machines. We do have records for kiosks and ATM machines. So again, if you were going to be doing a search in a neighborhood or in an area not driven by type of business, but more so the community itself, and you did not want ATM machines records to perhaps show up, you could always come in here and say ATM and search for that. And it will give me that definition along with that code. I can select it, add it to my box down here. There it is. I don't need to know the code. I just need to know there's my automated teller machines. I selected it. And now, as long as I leave this in play, I'll never see automated teller machines come up in my results, especially if I were going to be doing maybe some generic neighborhood or even city types of searches. So know you have that available to you as well. Let's do this. Let's look at, and I can always do a search for nonprofits as well. As you can see, it's a search I've done a few times because it popped right up there. So there's my SIC code for all nonprofit organizations. And as you can see, you can go through this list. There might be other things that would be important to folks in terms of their search as well. So I've got, as you can see, these related matches with a lot of these other nonprofit entities. So it just depends on how you need or what you need to search for in the database. So that is always something that's available to you. And if I wanted, maybe I wanted this home health care assistance service information and home helpers service, I could add those to my list, and then when I search my geography, that information will come up. And notice how granular that's gotten. So we took it from that 4-digit number and we added 5 more to make that a 9-digit number. Always available to you. Let's do this. Karen, I'll ask, or excuse me, Paula, I'll ask of you, is there a particular type of industry that has been supportive of your organization?
We had Denso was helping us, like the manufacturing sector.
Okay, so a manufacturing type of industry. Okay, let's do that. So in fact, I can do that right here from the major industry group real quick. We have manufacturing listed here. As you'll note there under quite a few codes here, I could select that entire universe if I want, which is, that's what it's just done. It's telling the system, I want that code from 20 through 39. You can see how big that gets, right? So if you need to be that large, you can certainly do so. And then you could just do, let's just do the county for the heck of it. I know that you all work in certain areas, but I'll just do all of Oakland and add that county. And I could be adding other counties, or maybe there's an adjacent city to the county that we also might do some work in. You could come right up here and add a city option as well, and then add that city and state. So know that you get to be the driver here in terms of how this thing is going to ultimately look. So as I go and look across your county, I have 3,278 businesses that fall into all of these categories as it relates to manufacturing. Now, Paula, what was the type of manufacturing that business is involved in?
It's called Denso, and it's they're like market research, lots of different things. They do quite a few things.
Oh, okay. So they could even fall under this miscellaneous 34. Let's do this. Let's look for their record in the database. We'll just do a company name search, and they are in Oakland, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And how is that spelled? B-I-N?
No, it's D as in dog, E-N-S-O.
D-E-N-S-O. S is in Sam?
S is in Sam, O, yes.
Okay. So do you happen to know, I'm assuming it's probably one of these two.
It's Southfield.
Oh, okay. So what I want to show you here, and this would work for everyone, we can look at the various things that they are involved in. So they must do a number of things for automobile manufacturing as well, correct?
Right.
Okay. So chances are, let's see if let's look under this code and see if we can find more like them. I'm going to jot that code down so that I can look for that and see if I can find more 5013s. And then I might add the 20 as an add-on. So then I can go back very quickly here and revise my search. I can get rid of that company name search. I'll leave Oakland there, but I can pull up this keyword search, and down here, I can just, instead of putting in a name of a type of business, I can just put in this code. So let's see what that is going to generate. I better do the 2.0 just so I can be specific. Okay, so there's that one. Let's see what else we might get. So there are 15 records that come up in Oakland that come under that code. Now let's switch it up to that's their primary line of business. See what that number is probably going to drop a little bit down to 10. So there are those 10, and Denso is right there on top. So here might be some other companies that are similar in nature to them that you might also want to perhaps reach out to.
That's great.
And notice we do have this executive name listed. In some cases when we called, we weren't given that information. So that's why that's blank. It's just like what happens with the number of employees. When we call those businesses, some will give us an exact number. Some may defer that question or say, you know, gosh, I'm not certain. I know we're doing some hiring and I don't know what that true number is at this point. If that's the case, we'll look at their peers and we'll overlay a range. So I can change this corporate structure up to show that title for these executives if I wanted to, in order to get to that kind of insight real quick. I can always find this information in the record as well. Let's leave this corporate tree structure because I do want to explain this. Wherever you see this down arrow, this means we're at the corporate parent. If you see an up arrow, it's pointing to an either a subsidiary that's along the way, or if there's not a subsidiary, it's the ultimate parent. Whereas let's go with this one. Whereas this key will give me their entire organizational chart. So here's this company out of Providence, Rhode Island. Their primary line of business are aircraft manufacturers. And then they have these 16 subsidiaries and some 104 branches. So if you need that kind of insight about a company, because you're preparing perhaps to reach out to that company to seek some assistance, some support, some sponsorship for your organization, you've got a wealth of information right here about that company. So know that that's always something that's available. And wherever you see a plus sign, like you see under these subsidiaries, you can get to additional branches perhaps, like in this case. So you may want to be armed with some of this information to have that dialogue with that particular company. And I got to all of that by simply going into that record for the company. So I can also open up their company record. And I've got the address information here first. And this is a typical look at what our records are going to contain as it relates to information. So I'll always have this location information first, followed by job listings. I've also got that corporate structure here. I've got that industry profile, the business profile. You might glean some great information from that. So they have at this location 100 employees and corporate wide 670. So we updated them last in January of 2020, and we're trying now to get them updated again. So we started calling in January of 21, and if we don't get them on that very first try, then we'll continue to try to do so for a total of 6 times throughout the year. We change up the day of week, time of day, so that we can try and reach that business and keep them verified. We'll do that for 2 consecutive years. And if after that point in time, we don't find any information about them closing or anything like that, we move that business and it becomes an unverified record. So we don't throw it out. We just don't know if it's closed or if it may still well be open. We were just not successful reaching them in those 12 attempts. So we've got this business demographic information, been in our database for about 27 years. We've got that management directory, quite deep here, as you can see. Wow, quite deep. Company news, we get this through Bing, and it's updated any day that Bing would have a source that brings them information about the company or the industry. And you can even go down through here and get to even older articles if need be. They're not going to have stock data on individual locations. That'd just be on the parent. Then I have those business expenditures, followed by some historical records. And notice this goes back to 03, but let's do this. In fact, they even changed their name up, it looks like, in 13. I'm going to open up this 13 record by just clicking on the business name itself. It brings up that record. Notes, I'm on the year 2013. I'm now actually in the U.S. Historical Businesses module. And notice I can go back as far as 97. So if I wanted to go back to 2000, for example, I could do so. Just depends on what I need. And I can always get back to my original record here. Plus, I'm going to have 3 additional sections. Use any UCC filings. Let's see if there are any. So there are a few there, most recent being 19. So they took out a loan and put something up as collateral. Note here, we captured that it was equipment machinery that they put up as collateral, and it lists the state that those were done in. Notice you have a few others even under here. I also have the nearby businesses because we have the latitude and longitude embedded in the background. So you always know who's next to whom. I would suggest, especially if you're intending on physically going to this business to have a meeting, you might want to check out and see who else is in the neighborhood, because you might find that there could be another business that you might perhaps want to consider contacting. And then I have a list of competitors, and it's all based on that SIC code. So every one of my records is going to look just like this. And by the way, I mentioned that you can download this information. You can download, as it notes here, 100 records at a time. So think of those records, or think of those 100 records as a batch. You can do as many batches as you need to, but it needs to be 100 records at a time. Clearly, I don't have 100 records here, so I could simply click this box next to company name. It grabs all 10 of those records, and then I simply come over here to my download. Remember, I can save this information if I didn't need to extract it from the database. I could certainly print it, but I can download it. And if I were going to be making mailing labels, maybe I wanted to do some outreach, I could do that. And the comma delimited is definitely what you want to leave that in. It still puts it into a form of Excel. If the name of the company, their address, phone, including information like who's that owner of that company, what's name, title, number of employees, type of business, sales volume, all of that will be contained in this download. And by the way, you can also email a download to yourself if you would prefer to do that. But here's what I'm going to have in terms of that download. So I could save this one record, this one download, and then do what I need to do with that information. So know that that is available. And the only limit is that number of 100. Otherwise, you can get as many batches as you need, just 100 at a time. Let me show you. I'm going to go back to that manufacturing just because there were so many. And I need some larger numbers here. So I'll do all of manufacturing and I'll say it needs to be their primary. And I'll get rid of the county. And I'm going to say, you know what, these companies need to have a web address because I want to be able to utilize that web information to go. One of the things that I always encourage of nonprofits to help with saving some expenses is if you need web addresses, we as a company, my company sells that information. But if you would like, you could always tell the system that you only want companies with a web address. And if you have the time, you could mine those web addresses. You have to do it one at a time, of course, but you could mine those web addresses to see if you could get email addresses and then do a small email campaign that way. So I'm going to select that, and then I'm going to open up my map-based search tool. This might be a very useful option for you. I'll open this up. Whenever using the map, you always want to make your selections for those filters first, and then open the map. So I'll just put in Pontiac and go. So there's Pontiac. I'm not that familiar with let's do this. I have these tools available. I can draw my own shape. I can use a true radius if I need to. I do have some predetermined boundaries like county or zip codes. Cities, just depends on what you want to use. Neighborhoods, it can get very, very close and go to neighborhoods. I can even create a drive route. So with the draw shape, you get to decide where it needs to start. It doesn't even have to be one of these boundaries that's on the map, right? You can forego and do whatever you need to do. So if I wanted to start here, it's a single click to start it. And maybe I want to come over here to Pontiac, and then I want to come up here, and it's another click to turn or to change directions. And maybe I want to end up right here. I can double click, and then it will calculate how many of those businesses are in that shape that match my criteria. If that's all I need, I can simply say done here. And as you can see, I'm ready to give you those 51 results. So this could be a great tool to use if need be. Here's my defined radius. So if this were, let's pretend I could be putting in, I just put in the city of Pontiac here. I could be putting in a zip code. I could be putting in a business's physical address right here, along with the city and state. And if this were it, let's pretend that this were it. I can simply click on it, hold it, and then drag it away. And it will begin to tell me how far out I've gone. So I'm already out at this point to nearly 2 miles right here. So if that was the extent of the radius that I wanted to use, I could let go of that. And again, it will calculate how many of those businesses are in that radius. The radius and the draw shape, you can go out 150 miles with that radius. So no, it can be quite large. I can even, inside of a already drawn shape, let's say that I use that radius and maybe I wanted to leave out just one part of this, and it were this part. I can double click. There are 3 results out of that 29 that are in this shape. I can click in that shape and exclude those 3 from that group of 29. Just depends on what I need to be able to do. Here are my predetermined boundaries. It starts as large as the state, but it could be as small as a neighborhood or a carrier route. If you were going to do neighborhoods, I'd get a little closer on the map. You can just drill in and get a little closer. Let's overlay the zip codes. What is that going to look like? So there are the zip codes in that area. In fact, I'll even back out one on that. So I can click, and this would be true if I were in a neighborhood or if I were in a city. I can click in that boundary, and it will calculate how many are in that particular boundary in that area. And I could do several boundaries. You know, maybe I want to do this particular zip code, and I want this one for whatever reason. I could do those 3 and then say done and get those results. And my drive route, I'll return to my tools. My drive route, I can put in a physical address to start from and end with. I could put in a street corner, 10th and Main Street, somewhere USA, to whatever address I want to go to. Just depends on how you want to do that. The max you can travel is 150 miles, and the max width is 15 miles. So if I'll just use a couple of communities here. I'll go with Omaha, Nebraska, and I'll go to Lincoln, Nebraska, which is like 55 miles away. And my buffer distance, I'll do 0.5. So in total, it'd be a mile, right? Because it's a mile or a half mile south, a half mile north. And there's my route. And it will calculate, I've got 174 results along this route between Omaha to Lincoln. And if that's what I need, I simply view my results and there they are. So I can really manipulate or get to data quite easily depending on the filters that I might want to use. Any questions? Because I do want to show you our information as it relates to consumers. In that particular module, you have the ability to identify people who are charitable donors. Any questions on our business data? It's really quite a easy tool to manipulate, and between the library and certainly any one of my peers that might answer a phone call or respond to an email, we can always help you out if you ever find yourself in a conundrum. Okay, let's just go ahead and go right to reference solutions. That is my home key. I'm back here at my home page. I'm going to open up the consumer lifestyles information. So we get this information from a lot of different sources. Magazines, for example, that people have sent to their home, surveys that people have completed, I know at work, I get surveys galore from travel agencies because I travel around the country a lot working, hotel chains, restaurant chains, car rental places. So imagine all of those places that you might respond to a survey. We're getting a lot of that information from those sources. Warranty card submissions, memberships. I was not in this database when I first moved back into Omaha from living out in the country, quite a ways outside of Omaha, in fact. And I became identified as a dog lover because I started buying my pet food, my dog food, at Petco. So that's how they learned about my activity related to my dog food purchases. So I'm going to go right to advanced search because there are so many filters here. So let's do this. Let's do Pontiac and go and Michigan. And I'll do one per household, one record, one address, one name, one address. It's the primary, and it is slanted towards the female gender simply because they do so much of the shopping for the household. So let's say that I were looking to identify, and these are all the various characteristics. Let's say that I was interested in identifying those charitable donors. I can open that up and it will give me these two options: charitable donor, wildlife, and environmental donor. I'll select charitable. And then it's a matter of, if I want to throw in some other filters, if I wanted to do some estimated home incomes, for example. So we're getting this through the Census Bureau and we're overlaying that against neighborhood information. So let's say that I want to identify, and I'll go up to 250. I want to identify those 5 options for ranges of incomes in Pontiac that are charitable donors. I have a total of 41 of those records with those specific listings. So I can view those records, and this is exactly what it's going to look like. And I do want to point out, it does state that any of these records that may have a telephone number on them, not as many as there used to be back in the day when landlines were popular, but any of those phone numbers that are displayed may be on the do not call list and should not be used for phone solicitation. And I'll add to that, if you want to purchase that kind of information, you can do so from us, and we will run that up against the do not call registry and then get you a list back that you could in fact call against. We're going to need to see what the intended use of those phone numbers are. So we need to approve the campaign. You can also send this through the do not call registry. They charge as well, and they would send you back a clean list that you could then call against. But if you wanted to do a mailing, you could certainly do that. I've got the information here. We'll just open this first record. I've got that address information. Now we're not call verifying this, but everything that we've seen is that Eric is married, been in his home for a few years. Then we've got that neighborhood information that we're getting through the Census Bureau, and then we make some adjustments to that. And that's the reason that record came in, because he's a charitable donor. And we do have, I'll back up and show you that, we do have a scoring system, and it's listed right here. It's 0 through 9. So whenever you pick a category, any category, it goes through this scoring system of 0 through 9. We will only present records back to you that score a 6 or higher. So no, you can certainly get access to that kind of information and perhaps attract some folks that might be interested in what your organization offers to the community. That really concludes what I wanted to show you for the presentation with reference solutions. Any questions? Paula, if you would like to get those other folks together, you could certainly reach out to the Pontiac Public Library and let Spiros know about that, and he'd be happy to get something like that set up for you.
I definitely will, because this is an excellent, way to develop fundraising strategies and partnership development. So, and it seems pretty easy to navigate. So I'm really impressed. I mean, it would take me forever to do this type of work on my own. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. You're very welcome. And I'm glad you were able to join us today.
Thank you.
You bet.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, for participating. I'm checking right now to see if there are any questions on Facebook. I don't see at this point anything coming in. Yes, Ms. Johnson, if you would like this to be scheduled, please let me know. And if there are any problems, we can get together with Bill, help you with any kind of navigation issues, setup issues.
Absolutely.
We can do that. There will be no problem.
Okay, that sounds great.
I do not see at this point any questions on Facebook, Bill.
Okay.
So we can probably conclude. Thank you so much for the useful information, for being here today. Thank you, Ms. Johnson, again for coming and participating.
Okay, thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.